Alrighty, hey everybody, Steve here, the retired hobby tech guy. And what we're going to do is we're going to drop this volume down and we're going to get into the video. Yeah, welcome back to the Varied Life channel. Again, I am Steve, the retired hobby tech guy. For those of you who don't know, quit a soul-sucking job, retired early, moved overseas, and got into 3D printing and some other hobby stuff like resin printing, FDM printing, painting miniatures, and I've got some interesting things that I want to do. Besides doing models, kind of like this guy here, and yeah, I know it's in white and it'll wash out as soon as I bring it up here, but you can see he's got some details there. Yeah. So anyway, part of this is a journey of doing hobbies and stuff that I really enjoy doing. And, you know, when you retire, you got to have some hobbies. So with that, getting into FDM printing or even resin printing, you can use a program called Mesh Mixer to cut up models. So if you make something really big, then what you can end up doing is cutting it into different, more manageable pieces. And you can even do connectors on there, and that's what we're going to do. We're also going to take a look on how you can set up your printer build area on Mesh Mixer, because I just found out how to do that when I was screwing around with it. So again, this is not a professional video in any way, shape, or form. This is me screwing around with Mesh Mixer, we'll just call it MM, and learning new things. And if you watch the prior video, had some information in there, but this one found some ways in which you can make it even better. So yeah, when we're talking about connectors. So let's just go ahead and jump right in. Boom! And there is our Mesh Mixer, our MM. And what we're going to end up doing, we're going to go in and instead of doing the bunny, because the bunny is pretty innocuous and boring, we want to do something a little bit better. So we're going to do this guy here. And if we could end up, I think it's this one right here. Let's see if that's it. And so we're importing. Yep, that's it. Okay. There's a few things that we can end up doing. So we see the model is like face down. Obviously, you wouldn't print that like that. So we're right-clicking and dragging and kind of rolling around. We can see that. But we want to change this orientation. So what we're going to end up doing is we're going to go up here to Edit. On the left-hand side, we have that option, and we're going to go over to Transform. And in Transform is where you would have that rotate feature. They don't call it rotate. You can rotate, and you can change the scale and stuff like that. So in Transform, it does a lot more than just rotate. But what we're going to end up doing is we're going to rotate this guy in a generally upright position, and we're going to raise him up a little bit. And I'm going to show you a reason why. I think we're good there. And yeah, I mean, that's good enough. Yeah, this model is kicking. I mean, look at that. That is what this guy that I printed out that I just showed you. This is him. So yeah, this is, he was a 32 millimeter little miniature, and Ivor, E-I-V-O-R, so you can find him that way. I can't remember where I got him. I think I paid money for him. I think I did. I just don't remember where because it was so long ago. And we're going to go ahead, and since we've done all this, and you can enter in the information here. So if you wanted to do specific numbers on rotation or your scaling, the size of your X, Y, and Z, you could keep it uniform scaling. So if you wanted to make this, say your Z scale, if you wanted to make it 100, you could go ahead and enter in 100 there and you would be good to go. Let's go ahead and do that. Let's just go ahead and we'll make that 100 millimeters, which comes out to about 4 inches. And everything else is good to go, so we'll hit accept. And boom, he is done. Not really exciting. So the first thing that we want to end up doing, because we're using this with an FDM printer, we need to set the printer properties. So we can do this a couple of ways. Let's go down here to printer, and usually if you haven't set anything up, you'll get this, And you can either set the printer properties here, or if you go up to the top right-hand corner, we can see that you have a number of different options. So like, for example, I don't know, just FlashForge, and you can click on that and it will populate and show you all the printers that it has stored that you can select. But it doesn't have our Creality K2 Plus, and if we look at this, it has the MakerBot Replicator 2, which is the default. So we're just going to go down here to the bottom left, we'll hit Printer Properties, and this is where we're going to set. So we can actually add this to the database, and we can enter in our printers. So we're going to put Creality, and our model will be the K2 Plus, which, by the way, if you want to purchase the K2 Plus, I've got an affiliate link down below. Gives me a few nickels, nothing comes out of your pocket, and I've been loving my K2 Plus. Anyway, so that's the plug. Anyway, down over here you can set your volume dimensions, in other words, your build area. So we're gonna go 350, and we can just hit tab and hit 350 and hit tab again and hit 350, and you can set the dimensions of whatever you want. And then the next thing it's going to do, let's go ahead and cancel this, printer software name. So we're going to put Creality Print, and the printer software path, for those of you, it's the directions, but what they've done is you can actually go through and it will default to your applications, at least on the Mac, and I'll click Creality Print app, we'll click open, and what this will do is end up is that after you do whatever you do to the model, you can actually send it to the printer. Now, I haven't tested this, but this is supposedly what this is. Format of file to send to printer, default is STL, so we're not going to mess with that. So I'm assuming that everything that you do on this is good to go. So we're going to go down here to the bottom, we're going to click apply, and yeah, again, don't really see much, but if we go up top to where it says view, and we could show the printer bed. And so now we get, now it brings it into perspective on how small this dude really is. So what we could end up doing, let's go to edit, and we will go to transform, and let's make this 200. And we can make them a little bit bigger, and we can put them on the build plate, and then, you know, we can kind of rotate around and we can see what we end up having. Notice that kind of weird stuff going on. I'm not sure what that is. We'll go ahead and hit accept, and it's good to go. So don't freak out if you see that little imperfections in the graphics and everything. But now that looks, you know, a lot better. And you can scale up your model to however big you want in the X, Y, or Z, do uniform scaling, or you could do the X or the Y and or the Z or whatever combination that you want. So once this is done, we've got this set and we have our printer set up. I want to talk about cutting the model again, and we're doing pin connectors. So the whole idea of the pin connector, which I don't have any models because they're all connected up, is basically you're going to cut, let's say this is, let's go back to this. Let's go back to our example, and let's say this is the model. And what we want to end up doing is we go through Mesh Mixer, and what we'll do is we will cut the model in half, and then we have two different parts. But we want to connect these two parts together. Say we cut off an arm, and because the model is too big, or we don't want to use a lot of supports. That's another reason why we could end up using Mesh Mixer to cut the model and print each individual item, so that way it doesn't need support. So this is an arm, kind of like this. You would need supports on this. So if we cut it at an area, you wouldn't need supports, you save on filament, and then you have to do a little bit of assembly. But again, it's another tool in the toolbox. But to connect these two areas up, if we do a planar cut, you're going to be kind of moving around and you're not going to be able to get it set right. But with a pin, And with a pin connector, you can put a hole in this side and a hole in this side, and then you can have the pin, and you could print all of those things, and then you could put it together, and you're good to go. So, a little bit of coffee spray to go with my mocha latte this morning. So that's what we got going on. Little bit of a thing that we got going on there. So let's go back to Mesh Mixer, and we're going to redo, we're going to cut some of these things, and I'm going to show you what we're talking about. Now, in the previous video, what we ended up doing is kind of zooming in, and we hit select, our selector tool, and we notice that it's set on brush or lasso. So we'll just kind of go over this again. This is the brush, and we can see that we can make the brush size a little bit bigger. You can see that there. And so we're just going to color this in, because in the middle of that, that's where we're going to put our cut. And with the brush, we have to go all the way around and make sure that we paint the entire area. Now, you got to be careful, because you don't want to get it on other parts of the model, which is one of the problems with this tool, the brush tool, is that if you get it on any other part of the model, that could cause some problems. So now that we've got that brushed in there, what we want to end up doing is going to edit, is up at the top, and we're going to scroll down and go to plane cut. And now what we're going to do is let's rotate this around, and remember how we painted in between the top of this armband and then where that little fur is. If we take our mouse button, our left mouse button, click and hold and draw right through the center of where we painted, boom, that will show our plane. And so with that, that's where it's going to make that cut. The problem is, if you don't paint enough and your planar cut is outside of the area that you painted, it won't work. And I really wish that Mesh Mixer, you can see the discoloration on there, but it's not real prevalent, unfortunately. And you can do some minor adjustments here. And let's just kind of see if that'll work. So that's one of the problems that I see with this, is that it's just kind of like, it's good, but it could be better as far as usability. So let's see if we can get that right there. So once we set that up, I think that's good. We should be all right. You can see a little bit of the discoloration of where we painted underneath. It's just not real prevalent. So once we've done that, we go back up to the top left where it says our plane cut, and we want to slice and keep both of the items. So we have one item with the entire model, but when we do our planar cut, you can make the decision to discard half, keep both, or slice groups. Keep both is usually what everybody wants to do. So we'll keep that. Remeshed fill, you don't need to mess with that, and just hit accept. And now, again, it's cut, but there's no real graphical interface. There's something that pops up that should pop up usually with normal software, say it is now model is cut or plane has been cut, which is kind of confusing, because if you don't understand that, you'll think that you did something wrong and you'll try to do it again and you'll mess it up. So now that you've placed where you want the cut, to finalize it, you need to go down here to edit, and you need to go down here to separate shells or separate shells. So once you do that, now we've got our separation. And this little object browser window comes into play, and we've got a ton of files. So the first one, we've got the main body, and then we've got the arm, and then we've got all these things. You know, all these things here that nothing pops up. We don't see any model anywhere. Think of those as dingleberries. That's the best way to do it. And what we can end up doing is we can hit click on one, and then click on hold shift and click on the other one, select all those, and then we have the delete function, and we can delete those out. It's just, I'm not sure, I guess there are little minor imperfections in the code or whatever, the software, but we have our two different models. So now that we've cut that, what we want to do is to create the pin connector. We want to create a hole, a female hole on one model and then a female on the other, and then we'll actually have the pin that we can join these two things together. And with some slicing software, what you can end up doing is doing that planer cut, and it does those connectors. You can also do pins and stuff like that. You can set how big. You can do that also with Mesh Mixer. So the good thing is that we can get a more precise cut. We can do that planer cut on, like we saw doing on the arm, and we don't have to worry about hitting or cutting into the model like you would in like Creality Print or others. In other words, you have more control by painting the area that you want to cut. And that leaves the rest of the model alone. Because remember, on this plane, if we did this in a slicer software, it would slice, that plane would slice right into the model, and you'd have all kinds of different parts. With this, by painting it, you can get real precise cuts on your model, as you can see there. So let's go ahead and let's see. Now let's just do one more. So let's go down here to the leg, and we're going to do this. Here's an interesting little thing that we could end up doing. And we're going to go up to select, and we're going to go up to here at the top. And instead of using brush, we're going to use lasso. So we're going to target or click that and select that. And now if we click, and it's going to draw a line, we click again, we come down. Again, we want a pretty good area, and we go back there and click that box. So now what that will do is, as you can see, that will go all the way around, but we do have some spillage here. So that probably is not going to work, because if we do the planer cut like that, it will cut into some of these other things. Matter of fact, let's just go ahead and see if that is the case. And again, what we want to end up doing is just doing the left click and drag, and that's where it'll set the plane. And again, I think we're good like that. And we kind of want to orientate this so that, no, I didn't want that. You can always redo it. And I think we're all right there. Should be good to go. Now, need to rotate a little bit. And then we'll take that up a bit. And I think we'll be good. Like that. I hope so anyway. And we'll keep both parts up at the top left. For the planer cut, we'll hit accept. And we see a blue line there. When we see a blue line there, sometimes that causes problems. So let's see if it did or not. So we'll go to separate shells. And yeah, okay, it ended up where it worked. Now we did, so we have the body that we have, and then we have the one arm, and then we have the leg, and then we have this little ape hanger here, this little dingleberry. So we're just going to go ahead and remove that and hit delete. So now what we're going to end up doing, let's just take this arm, and we're going to do a hole on both sides, and then we'll do our pin. So let's go over here, and we'll take the bottom foot, we'll take that off. We'll just click on the model, and let's just click the arm. We'll do the arm first. And so we'll kind of zoom in here. And now what we're going to do is we're going to take our pin that we're going to create, and to do that we're going to go up to Mesh Mixer up on this left-hand side, and we've got a number of things that we can put here. Excuse me. You have to click and hold, left click and hold, and drag that onto the plane of where you want this connector to go. Obviously that's too big. So there's a couple of ways that you can reduce the size of this. You can either click right here, left click and hold, and you could change that. So let's say we draw it down to there, and we're good to go. There's also what you could end up doing is changing the dimension in the box in the top left. So let's say if I want to make it 5 millimeters, and boom, there it is. So we could do it that way. Let's go ahead and cancel that, because what I want to show you, because with a cylinder, you still have that movement, and we want everything to line up perfectly. So what we'll do is we'll go to Mesh Mixer, or Mesh Mix, and we'll go down to the square, and we'll drag that onto the plane, and we will resize that, and let's just make it 8. And remember this number, or whatever number that you enter in here. Now, the great thing about having this as your connector or as your pin is that you're going to be able to line up the part more precisely as instead of using a cylinder. So we've got that there. That's what we want. Let's say we just move it around a little bit. We just kind of put it right in the center, and that'll work out good. So it embeds itself into the model, and then we have some stuff on the outside. So if I remember correctly, remember we set it for a dimension of 8 millimeters. Again, you can set it to whatever you want on your model. Just remember the number that you put in here because we have to do the holes, and it has to be a little bit bigger than the pin itself, or vice versa. And down here it's set to the default of create new object, and so we'll accept. And so now, if we look in our little browser, object browser here, now we have that part. So we've got both of those. So now what we can end up doing, we're going to click onto the model itself. So that is selected, and then we'll hold shift, and we can click on the square that we just did. And now what we want to end up doing is a Boolean difference. So it'll automatically pop up, which is really weird, how this automatically populates as a menu. You think you would select both of those items and then right click and then get this menu option showing the different things that you can do, but it doesn't. So that's kind of a weird thing. So we're going to go to Boolean. Oh, before we do that, let's back out of that. We'll click on the model. Almost forgot. And what we're going to end up doing is we're going to duplicate. So we see over here in the box it says drop part 1, and it's a copy. So we're just going to click the dropped part, well, actually the model, and then we'll click the dropped part 1. And now what we can end up doing is the Boolean difference. And see, nope, that's not what we want. What is it? No. Maybe it is. Oh, it is, because we haven't accepted yet. Here's some interesting things. I've seen a number of people online go to these selections here, like auto reduce result, and they unclick it, but nobody says why. I don't know why. But when you come down here, when I was playing with this, because if we notice on this square, it can get kind of funky looking, and excuse me, it ends up that the dimensions aren't really square. And in my last video, I showed you when we did this with a pin with a male and female. With both of those, it had a really low poly count, and it was just kind of fugly. It wasn't real precise. But if we go down here, we can target edge scale. And so if we do this, we can see that it kind of messes up a little bit. So we're going to take this down to 0.25, and we get some real crisp, clean edges on this. And I think the border edge, haven't really seen any difference with that. So, and then the preview iterations, haven't seen anything with that. So I'm not sure what that's for. So we'll just keep that and set the target edge scale at 25, and we'll hit accept. And oh, it didn't do the difference. Let's try this again. Select the model, select that. Oh, wait a second. No, it did. Ah, dang it. Why did it not do that? Because we didn't do the union. So that, maybe it has to do this one and then that one and then do the Boolean difference. Nope, that's not it. Click the model, then click this. Oh, wait a second. We want to get rid of that. We want to do the part 1, so that one and the part. And then we want to do the Boolean difference. And there we go. Okay. The joys of learning new software. I told you I wasn't a professional at this. So we get to this page here, and now we notice how we see some imperfections in this, and almost like there's holes around the edge and how it's not perfectly square. That's where this comes into play. Again, I'm not sure what the auto reduce result is, but when you get down to the target edge scale, if we do that, we can see that those edges and holes and everything gets worse. If we take this down and down to 0.25, now we've got a lot cleaner edges. And I think that's as low as you can get it. So that's what we want to end up doing, is to clean up those edges so that way when we use our pin, it will connect in there and it won't be all garbled and jacked up. So there is that is a nice receptacle. That is a nice female piece there. And we got nice clear cut edges, so that will definitely work when we do our connector. So that, we're good to go. So let's go ahead over here to our browser box. We will hide that and we'll go back to our main model because we're going to do the same thing. And then what we're going to end up doing is go to our dropped part, the copy, and it is in the exact same position. So that's why you need to make two of them. So let's go ahead and do this. Let's see if I can do this better than the last one. So we've got the model selected. We'll hit Shift and click that. And now we've got the model and the drop part, that copy of the pin, and we're going to go up to Boolean difference. And we come up to the same screen. Again, I'm not sure why that, and we'll drop this down to 0.25, and we've got a much cleaner hole. And we're going to go ahead and hit accept. And there we've got a nice clean hole. Still got a little bit of a strange edge there, but that's a lot better than what we had before. And I screwed something up. I forgot. We still need to have the pin. So we finished with that. And so we've got a pin there and a pin on the arm. If we take a look at that. But now we need to actually make our pin. So I should have made an extra copy. So what we can end up doing is we just go to Mesh Mixer. We will click this and drag this onto there. And what we can end up doing with the transform tool, if we remember the size that we did and we put 8 millimeters, we just go ahead and put 8 and we have the uniform scaling, boom, that will drop that down into that 8 millimeters. So that is actually another mesh and everything is set. But remember, we set the receptacle holes, the female holes, as 8 millimeters. So we're going to need, this pin is going to need a little bit of space so that it can fit in. And with FDM printing, you're going to get a little bit of expansion, you know. So what I've found, and I haven't printed this out, but a number of people have tried this, and I'm going to do some tests on this. But supposedly, if you reduce it by 0.1 millimeters, that should be enough. But we're going to test that a little bit later on, not on this video. So we'll put 7.9. And since we have the uniform scaling there, we'll just hit enter. That goes across the whole way. And everything else is good. We'll hit accept. And there is our pin. So what we can end up doing is now, if we take a look and we have the rest of our model. So there is our model. We've got our arm. And if we take a look, let's get rid of the body. We can see that we got the receptacle. We can see down here that we have our pin, which has been reduced by 0.1. And then, you know, we've got everything else. And again, the receptacle there on that. So that way we can line up the piece really well. And again, we're going to do some test pieces on this in another video. Maybe not on this character here, but just on some basic low poly shapes to see how this works with a small test print and see how this goes. So we've got all this set, and then what we can end up doing is, let's say, I think what we can end up doing is going down to print, and what it'll end up doing is it pops up and it highlights all of these things here that was on our build plate, and when we clicked print, it says send to Creality Print. Now this is going to be a first because I've never done this. We set the parameters and to go to the application and let's see if it actually works. That says at least one object is not contained in the print volume. Do you want to send all objects or only the objects inside? Let's just go ahead and do all. And I think it's because of that square is below the build plate, but we'll just go ahead and hit all. And let's see if it actually opens up Creality Print, which I'm not seeing that it's doing. Okay, alrighty. So, how about them apples? Let's go, we're going to select the square, and no, we don't want that. We want edit, and we want transform, and we're just going to bring this up off the build plate, like so. I think that should be good enough. And now, let's try selecting everything, and go to print, send to Creality Print, and it's not working. Alrighty there. Printer preferences. Let's see if we can edit. Creality Plus. We've got all that. Creality Print. Browse. STL. Let's try that because we didn't enter in the STL. So let's try that. And we're done. And now let's try to send this to Creality Print. Dun 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 dun. Nada. So obviously something needs to work there because it's not popping up in Creality Print. And here's another thing that I found out is that we have all of these items selected, and you would think that if you had all these highlighted and you go to export and it pops up, let's see, just Viking, and we'll put in a new folder on the desktop and put Viking, create, and boom, the STLs, but it says export mesh. But the problem is that when we do that, what pops up is we can see that we got our Viking STL. And we're going to open that with Creality Print. That it's not going to load. Loading a model has failed. Does not contain geometry. So yeah, we're just kind of all kinds of screwed up there. So we go back to Creality Print, and what I found is you have to go back and end up having to export each individual part. So let's just click the body, and we could do export, and just call that body. And again, that's in Viking. Save that. We're good to go. We go down here to that, and we'll export that. And we'll just call that arm, save that. We'll go down here to this, and we'll export that and call that a leg. And then the last thing is going to be our connector. So we'll hit export, and we'll put square, hit save. And now what we can end up doing, since we've got all of those, now what we can end up is importing that stuff into Creality. And so we'll just select all of these and we draw those in there. And loading a model has failed. Oh no! As a high single object with multiple parts. Let's see. Okay. So it tagged it all together. Interesting. That didn't happen before, so let's do it this way. And we might have to put all these in as individual. Yeah, I think we do. So did the arm, did the body, we'll do the leg, we'll do the little square, and the Viking, we need to get rid of that because that doesn't work. So there we have our model. And what we can end up doing is let's kind of move some of this stuff out of the way. And we can see that we got our square. And let's get a closer look. And we can see that we've got a real nice, clean female part there. So yeah, we've got that. And if we look on the bottom of his arm, I know I'm making you sick, but we can see there that we've got that receptacle there for his arm. So that works out pretty good. You'll notice down here in the bottom left, it says that non-manifold edges fixed model is only available in the Windows version. So if you have a Mac, Creality's lacking, but we can have all these things and we can put this onto the print bed. So with this, we could go ahead and we can choose, let's just put the model like that. We can choose this model like that and do our edges. That one will do like that. And then this one, yeah, I wouldn't cut this like this because that would just be ugly. And you don't have a lot of surface area. So printing in this configuration, you would have a lot of supports on here. It would be a lot of wasted filament, and it really wouldn't work out well. So probably what I would end up doing is cutting this other leg off, kind of like we did this one here. And then that way you could, again, put both legs orientated like this one. So that way you would need maybe very minimal supports. So think about that when you're cutting your model and saying, you know, well, how many supports am I going to use and where are the supports going to go? So for example, when we zoom into this model here, where would we want the supports? The supports are going to run up this arm and especially along here, you know, maybe a little bit there and along this edge here. And you'll get some marks and scoring of where those supports are going to be contacted onto that model. But the way that this is originally made in the model, that's going to be on the inside and the down. So it'll probably be right like here, and then kind of like with this other arm, you won't really notice those, whoa, what are we doing? Craziness. But in a standing position of how this is going to be, where those supports connect onto that arm, you're not really going to notice, or it'll be minimal. And who's going to lift it up and look on the underside of the axe and the hand that is on the inside, towards the inside of the body? Nobody. So think about that when you're cutting your model up in Meshmixer on where you're going to place those cuts. So with that, what we ended up doing is we kind of went over, we showed you how to set the printer, how you can, I don't know why it says send to Creality Print and that's not working. I'll have to dig into that, but we can go through on this top right and we can go through and hit printer preferences, and let's say our Creality, let's make none of them visible. We could do that, and we can edit, and boom, 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 and you could set your width, depth, and height. Again, I'm not sure why that is not working. I wonder if that has to be capitalized. I wonder if that has to be point or period STL. Command line arguments, I'm not sure. Let's try this and see what happens. Okay, so let's grab, you don't want everything. Let's just grab that leg and let's see if we can send that to the printer and see what it does. Send to Creality Print. Does it do anything? No indications. Do we have a couple of legs? Nope, we still got the same number of legs. So there must be some type of command line thing that you're supposed to do. And this is a new version of Meshmixer. In other words, it's the most up to date. So they just haven't added the Creality K2 Plus. So it is what it is. What can you do? So anyway, that's what we ended up doing today, is showing how you can set the printer preferences. So if it's not listed in that what you can end up doing is entering in that information. At least you can get your build plate dimensions in there so that when you scale a model, what you can end up doing is seeing in relation to, okay, my bed is 256 cubed or 350 cubed or whatever it is. You can get a visual representation of that. So anyway, that's what we got going on that. some fun stuff. And then we also went to where we could cut those two items. We could cut an item into two, and then we could have a female end and a female end, and then we could make a pin in Meshmixer, and we'd have to downsize that pin, supposedly 0.1 millimeters. And I'm going to do, maybe, I don't know if today, maybe I'll do a video. I'll just do a quick test print and then show you the results and see how that works out on the Creality K2 Plus. So you might have to, and even in slicer programs, you will see that you can set an offset for your pins and stuff like that. So, you know, when you print with an FDM printer, you're going to get a little bit of expansion. So unless your printer and filament is super calibrated and dialed in, you want a little bit of wiggle room so that you can put the model in there, it lines up, it goes together, slap some glue into those holes, put your pin, and boom, you're good to go. So it'll have to do a little bit of playing around with that. But we can do a simple little test with that, and I think that's what I'll end up doing, is just make something in Tinkercad, and then we can cut it. We can do the little pin connector and see how that works out, and see if that offset 0.1 millimeters is actually true. Supposedly it is, but I've never seen anybody on Meshmixer show the pin and that reduction and actually print a model and see if that actually works. So I'll be doing that in a future video. So yeah, Meshmixer is a little bit different because of the user interface isn't in line with a lot of other stuff. So for example, you would think in most software, what you could end up doing, let's get rid of this, you could, you know, shift and select all these different items. You know, you can do that. But this pops up with a menu, whereas before, normally in other programs, you select everything and then you right click and you would have the menu options. In Meshmixer, it just pops up here on the side, and that makes it, and you have duplicate, transform, align, create, pivot, combine, or whatever. Let's see what do combine does. Does that combine everything? Okay, yeah, it did. Ooh, that's interesting. See how in the object browser, it made everything one part. Wow. And if we go over here, since everything is selected, if we hit separate shells, is that going to separate everything? It did. Wow. Look at that. That is kind of cool. And it made them different colors. So there's a possibility that if you download a model and the model has different shells and then it was grouped together, you could bring that into Meshmixer and you could basically ungroup it in however they did it, and you could run that as well. That's interesting. Wow, cool. Alrighty, so we learned some good stuff there. You know, there's so much more that you can do with this, and I'm just slowly learning. And like, for example, I haven't even messed with the Meshmixer part here on like adding stuff to a model. Like if you can end up, boom, let's just try to add a horn in the middle of his head, and we'll see how that goes. Oh, this is going to be weird. I haven't done any of this, and I'm not a graphical artist by any means. And we could do that, create new object. Now we could select the object, and we could end up sculpting this. We have some brushes fall out. We could draw this out. Spikes. Let's see if we could do some spikes. Okay, that was like... Okay, that was weird. Let's see. Let's just do pinch. Let's try that a little bit. And I think, let's go zoom in, and whoa, that's way too much. And I wonder the size. So let's reduce this. And what we could end up doing is, so we could pinch that. I don't know, that doesn't really do what we want. Let's try some other stuff. Drag. Oh, look at that. So that's kind of a weird thing. So, yeah, okay. There we go. And we could take that, and then we could do the union and joining that together, and boom, there we've got a little horn on our dude there. So, yeah, let's just go ahead and we'll accept that and see what happens. And now he's got this weird hook hanger thing. Okay, so anyway, yeah, that's what we ended up doing today, is having a little bit of fun with that. Yeah, I am no graphic artist at all, but it's interesting to see how many different tools there are in Meshmixer, besides doing the cutting and besides how to do your holes, doing pins and the holes and the connectors and all of that stuff. A lot of different things, and especially how you can make better connectors, better holes, and better pin using the settings that we looked over. So yeah, kind of interesting. It's a little bit of a learning curve there because, again, the user interface is a little bit different than most of our other software that we're normally used to. I'm sure the younger people will get it faster than me because I'm old. But that's what we got going on. So anyway, we're going to finish up this video, and really appreciate you watching. If you got any tips, tricks, suggestions, videos, playlists that I can watch and learn and become better at this, definitely drop that in the comment section down below. Or you can send me an email at officialthevariedlife@gmail.com. Excuse me. And I answer every single email. So whether it's about being an expat, retired overseas, or hobby stuff or whatever, or you just want to say hi, you can always contact me at the email. Please like and subscribe. That is the biggest thing that you can do. But if you really want to do me a solid, you can buy me a coffee. There's a link in the description box down below. I buy coffee for creators that I get good information from, that I feel that, I get some good stuff. And then these people in the ticker, those scrolling people are the ones who have bought me coffee. So much respect to them because they are awesome, and you could be part of that awesome group as well. So anyway, if not, at least like and subscribe. That is the minimum. You can do that for me, and I would appreciate that. All right, with that said, thanks for the thumbs up, and we will see everybody on the next video, and we'll do the test print. So I think what we'll end up doing is I'll mess around, I'll make a test print, we'll check out the connector, we'll do the square pin, we'll do the 2 holes and see that offset and see if that actually works and if it holds any credence. And maybe we'll do a couple of them because we need to give ourselves a little bit of wiggle room, see what works, what doesn't, what is the happy medium, and we'll go from there. So yeah, we'll take that. All right, we'll see you. Have a good one. Peace.